The topic that I had chosen while I was approached by Sir is the coordinates of Indian Nepali imagination, with special reference to the evolution of Nepali literature in India. So I'd like to repeat the topic, the coordinates of Indian Nepali imagination, with special reference to the evolution of Nepali literature in India. So rather than only speaking on the Nepali literature, I'd like to highlight the historical background of the entire Nepali imagination and the identity, quest for identity, and pivoting my discussion on this particular background, I'd like to highlight on the literary evolution of Nepali language. Uh, I'd like to request again Arutika ma'am and sir, if there is some glitch in network or something like that, if some glitch occurs, kindly inform me.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
Thank
Sure.
you. So, in order to start with, I'd like to start uh, my presentation with my favorite poet, my poet guru, Maya Angelou. Uh, I'd like to recite a small excerpt from her poetry. Out of the herds of history's shame, out of the huts of the history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Next quote, a poetry quote again from Adikavi Bhanubhakta Acharya, who is regarded as the initial poet of Nepali literature. He has imagined India when the India was ruled by British in his scripts, and he specifically writes one very important, significant line in his Ramayana, in his poetry book. Ati durlabh janos bharat bhumi ko janma janale. This means blessed is the man who is born in India. So this very love for India and imagining India in the Gurkha community or Nepali speaking community was there in the very inception of the Nepali literature in its history. I hope that the slides are being displayed. Oratika, the slide.
Yeah. Ha. Slide is showing. We're on the
Ask,
Bhanubhakta slide.
okay, I'd like to ask my colleagues, all the colleagues, if my friends, like if they are, whether they are.
Actually, sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Your voice is breaking. That's why I couldn't hear you. Repeat once again.
Whether the friends are, our respected colleagues are, able to see the slides.
Yes, everyone can see.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So I'd like to start with a discussion on where the language, this Nepali language are spoken in India. Specifically, this language is spoken in the areas of regions of Darjeeling, Kalimpong, Kushiyong, Himalayan state of Sikkim, Northeast India, Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, etc., Dehradun, Bhagsur, Lucknow, Shimla, Baklo, Dharamsala, including Kolkata, Delhi, and now even Bangalore, and throughout India. Like, this language is spoken, and as per the last census, like the entire population of Nepali speaking in peoples in India, community in India, it accounts at 1 crore in total. Maybe like in the next census, it might come up to 1.5 crore, inclusive of 6 lakh population in Darjeeling district itself, and 6 lakh population of Nepali speaking people in Sikkim, almost 25 lakh in northeastern states. Whenever the identity, quest of identity, and the confusions of identity, and always like Nepali speaking people in India are in the situation of perplexity, paradoxical situation regarding their identity question. Most of the times, always the Nepali speaking people are referred to always the sovereign nation Nepal, as it is in the case of Bangladesh. For the Bengali people, we, like, my papa happens to be, my father happens to be Punjabi, from Punjabi origin, Punjabi ethnic origin, My forefathers came from Pakistan, Rawalpindi, the undivided Punjab before 1947. So even the peoples coming from Pakistan, they are questioned in India. The peoples coming from Nepal, they are questioned in India. Peoples coming from Bangladesh are being questioned in India regarding their ethnicity and regarding their nationality background. So there is always a confusion, paradoxical situation regarding the identity of Indian, Nepali-speaking people. So I'd like to briefly touch upon the historical background of what exactly happened during the British era. The shared international, the border that is like amazing border that is there between India and Nepal, that is there in the three portions specifically. One is in Panitanki, which is just nearby Siliguri. Another border is there in Pashupati, nearby Darjeeling. Another is in Raxaul, in UP. These are the bordering areas wherein this is the probably only border area which is shared by India with the neighboring country, where the citizens of both the countries are allowed for the free movement without any passport and without any visa. And this যখন আমরা শুনি প্রথমে খুব ভালো লাগতে পারে, খুব মানে শুনতে গিয়ে খুব ভালো লাগে যে ভিসা ছাড়া, পাসপোর্ট ছাড়া আমি অন্য কান্ট্রিতে যাচ্ছি। আমি আর কি মেরেও বলি যখন আমার প্রোগ্রামগুলো ইভেন্টগুলো নেপালে হয়, তো বন্ধুরা বলে যে কোথায় যাচ্ছিস, তো আমি বলি যে বিদেশে যাচ্ছি। তো বিদেশ কোথায়? নেপাল। তো ওরা হাসে। So this is the situation, and this might sound to be very interesting, without passport, without visa, you can travel to another country irrespective of your nationality. But then this has also created in one sense a nuisance and paradoxical situation and a conflict and a dichotomy of the citizenship, because the Nepali speaking people from Nepal, they easily are transported to India, and then always a situation is created wherein it becomes sometimes really difficult for even the administration to differentiate between the Nepali speaking people coming from Nepal and Nepali speaking people residing in India. The shared international border and the historical interface with Nepal have created a confusing status regarding the identity of Nepali-speaking Indian citizens among the mainstream India. Here you can see this picture which I have shared with you. This is a picture on the Mechi River, which divides India and Nepal. This is known as Mechi River, very famous river, wherein you can see the van from India is going inside the Nepalese territory, and you can see rickshaw coming from Nepal to India. You can see one vendor, maybe he's a mishti seller or something like that. He is going to Nepal. So you can't know, you can't figure it out. One guy is there on the right side, whether he's a Nepali citizen or Indian citizen, you can't figure it out. Two girls, one girl and one boy is going, their back is visible, so they are going towards Nepal. Maybe perhaps they might be Nepali citizen or Indian citizen. So this is the এটাই বিচিত্রতা, আর এটাই কিন্তু একটা মানে কি বলবো, একটা paradoxical situation. Sugauli Treaty 1816, the 1950 Indian-Nepal Treaty of Peace and Friendship between Nepal and India. These two treaties are very, very significant for India and Nepal. These treaties allow nationals of both the countries to live and work in either country, often have caused many to think that the Nepali-speaking Indian citizens are migrants from Nepal. Most of the Nepali-speaking people in India face this situation. Even I have faced in several situations, several conditions, and several instances. And even our Nepali-speaking poets and literatures, when they visit various places, while invited by the government of India, like Sahitya Academy, it's a government of India institution. When it organizes multilingual events, wherein Nepali-speaking writers are also invited. Even I was invited in Gujarat once. So therein, I had lots of friends. I developed relationships, bondings with various writers from other languages. But then during tea time, I was asked, you are from you are Nepali speaking writer, so you are from Nepal. So such kind of and we need to keep on making them understand. We need to convince them, no, we are Indian citizen. Even while I meet with Arundhati Roy, the goddess of contemporary writing, I had an opportunity to meet with her. Same thing happened. Arundhati asked me, told me that I'm fascinated with Nepal, and I would really like to visit Nepal. So if I come down to Nepal, I'll meet with you. So again, I had to explain Miss Arundhati also. So this happens. So And I'm sharing one more picture with you. You can see again this Panitanki border. And right now there has been one more development in this border. One huge international project is going on out here, which is Asian Highway Project, which connects China to India, China with India. So you can see this picture, and you can see on the right hand side the map between Nepal and India, wherein you can see the bordering areas, which are very close to Bihar and Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal. So India and Nepal share almost 1,750 kilometer long border, which are totally open. Which is totally open, and only one fencing is there in between Nepal and India in Bahundangi, a place which is known as Bahundangi, wherein like that fencing is for electrified fencings for the elephants. Last time I had an opportunity of attending Indo-Nepal journalist meet, wherein like very critical agenda were put up, like the agenda of cross-border movement of the elephants. Elephants, you see, they don't have the nationality, so Nepalese people, Nepalese government, they try to chase out the elephants coming from India, and Indian government in turn again do the same, vice versa. So this event has become the menace for the animals as well. Okay, I'd like to move on to next slide. Beyond borders. So slowly the imagination of Gorkha people, Nepali speaking people, and I'd like to make it clear to my friends, Gorkha and Nepali, these two terms are today contemporarily, these two terms are used synonymously. So this Nepali imagination, slowly it started taking shape in different manner, because the British regime, the colonial British colonialism, gave one image to Gorkha people that this Gorkha community is a martial race who are very powerful enough to fight in any war. So this is how the identity of Gorkha people was created as a brave, martial race. But then, like slowly, like the time has changed, and slowly the Gorkha community has been able to develop itself as a community which can act normally as other communities that are there in India. Although, what is the historical background which slowly took the Gorkha people out of this border blues? But then still this border blues is there between India and Nepal. Their ongoing demand, the demand of Gorkha land, it has mainly been fueled by their desire not to be viewed as migrants from Nepal, but rather be viewed as Nepali-speaking Indian citizens, and the desire to preserve and promote their language and culture. So Gorkhaland, this movement we need to discuss, because like this is also one of the political biggest political upheavals in India, which has got lots to do with, again, Indian Nepali literature. That's why I have pulled this word out here. The successful movement for constitutional recognition of Nepali language finally led to the Parliament of India to recognize this Nepali language as one of the official languages. So when it was the bill was passed in 1992, it was the 19th language which was included in the 8th schedule of Constitution of India. And 1961 was the year in which the West Bengal government recognized Nepali as one of the official languages of Bengal, prior to the government of India, central government, giving recognition to Nepali language. 1975 was the year when it was recognized as one of the modern languages of India by Sahitya Academy. And 1992, as it is very obvious, it was the year when government of India included Nepali language in 8th schedule. We will right now briefly go to the, although it is very complicated to talk about the origin of any language, it's very tough area. Although I have tried to trace the origin of Nepali language. It is Indian Aryan language. The root is Indian Aryan. And the origin of Nepali language is Khas Bhasha, which is specifically spoken by Bahun and Kshetri elite, these elite, so-called elite people community in Nepali community. These people used to speak this language, Khas language, and Khas language slowly, when merged up with Sanskrit and Hindi, and slowly with even some of the Persian words, it evolved as Nepali language. Historically, the language was called Khas, and it was a speech that time. It was known as Khas Kura. and it was spoken in Karnali region specifically, and the Gurkhali region, which is there in Nepal. And slowly it got spread. And there is one more important significant point that I need to highlight right now out here is Raja Prithvi Narayan Shah. When even Nepali language was not there, he slowly developed Nepali language as a lingua franca for unifying Nepal, which is known as the Great Unification of Nepal. There is a huge epoch in Nepal. The Nepal as a sovereign country, which we see today, used to be again like a collection of small resortas, as it was in the case of India before 1947. India was not a nation as such. As in the same way, Nepal was not a nation as such. Prithvi Narayan Saha made it possible to make the Nepal as a unified country. And naturally, like there are too many sub-communities within the community of India, like Bahon, Chetri, Newar, Kami, Damai, Gurung, Lepcha, Tamang. All these sub-communities were used to speak in their own language. Subba, Rai. Rai itself, it is said that Rai language has got almost 50 plus sub languages, so with their own scripts. So this was the situation. But then you need to have a lingua franca while you are unifying the territories. So Prithvi Narayan Shah took the initiative to develop Nepali as a lingua franca, wherein like Bhanubhakta Acharya, Motiram Bhatta, these people played a significant role in developing Nepali language as a language out of Khas language, Khas Bhasha. And Ramayana was the first ever script that we got in Nepali language as such, although like officially there are other scripts, but then this was the major script which we got. The Nepalis who settled in Darjeeling, how Nepali language originated, again still we are on the same topic. The Nepalis who settled in Darjeeling, Siliguri, Sikkim, Kalimpong, Assam, and the rest of the northeast came from the multiple ethnicities. Like here I'd like to discuss one point, that is like how this language, Nepali language, was emerged as one of the lingua franca in India, wherein like lots of Nepal, languages and dialects were there. So in Nepal it was the case, it was a different case, and in India it was a different case. Like when British regime started in India, slowly they started the industries in India, and it was almost at par with the epoch was at par with the Industrial Revolution, and industries were the main activities of the industrial colonialists of British regime. So they started chiefly a few industries in India. One of them is very, very important, that is tea industry, and another industry is Sincona. Tea was started almost at around 1855, maybe, like I'll check. I need to check with the data. And Sincona was started in 1865 in India, in the northern part of the Bengal, wherein like the place is Darjeeling. And specifically in Darjeeling, almost more than 250 tea estates were there. 19,000 workers were involved in this activity of tea production. And specifically the introduction of Darjeeling Himalayan Railway, DHR, the toy train, which is a heritage toy train today for the Indian Railways today, specifically for these three industries: the tea industry, the Sincona industry, and the train industry. Lots of Nepali-speaking people, they were involved in these three industries. And apart from this, one more very important aspect is there, like lots of Gurkha soldiers were used by the British people. In even outside India, specifically during the First World War and Second World War, and more of them were used in the Second World War, and lots of treaties were there in between Nepalese government and Nepalese administration and the British colonialists. And the conditions were one amazing point in historical aspect is that Nepal was never ruled by British government as such, a British colonies, East India Company as such. It was there in the rule of India, but then it was not there in Nepal. So what happened is, like British people, they went in Nepalese territory, and they did some kind of, they made it a point that they will not involve in war, but then like there will be some exchange of physical, materials, or uh, when the treaties when the treaties were signed in between India and Nepal. India as India ruled by British that time. The main conditions were from the British side is that the Nepalese government have to give the soldiers to them. So those soldiers were used in various wars in the various countries. Like Brunei was one of the country where the Gorkha soldiers were there, and lots of Gorkha soldiers, they settled down in Brunei itself. The war of Falkland War, the war in Malaysia. So lots of Gorkha soldiers were used. So this is also one of the prime historical sources from where the Gorkha people were in India, like they entered Indian region. And I'd like to refer to in the two major industries: tea industry and the Syncona industry. Tea industry is still now it is owned by the private players in Darjeeling. During British era, these tea industries were owned by British rulers, and at the same time some of the private players. But the Syncona is the only industry in Darjeeling which is owned by the state government still now, and railways is also owned by the British by the Indian government. So lots and moreover, one major road is there, that is Hill Cart Road, which connects the rest of the India with Darjeeling. So this road was also made in 19th century. So when this road was basically made for transporting the tea producers and the Syncona producers, which are taken from Darjeeling to the rest of the part of the world. So there was a necessity of making a huge road, and that road was that road was named at that time as Hill Cart Road. Today it is NH 55, National Highway 55, which is the highway, one of the highways of India. And so during the construction of that road, lots of laborers were also involved, and mostly the sub communities of Nepali community who were involved in laboring these roads are from the Limbu, Tamang, Lepcha peoples. And Lepcha peoples were again they were basically the farmers, but then this is the one of the peculiarities. And most of the rest of the sub communities of Gorkha people were either involved in the army or in the industries like tea and Syncona. But then most of the Lepcha people, they were into farming. So slowly what happened is, like, while the Nepali was introduced as a lingua franca slowly, and even the market demanded this, and always the market demands one single lingua franca. So market mechanism slowly demanded one lingua franca in Darjeeling area. So but then, like, while these people were there in the very initial phase, they used to speak their own sub languages. Like Lepcha people will speak in their own, would speak in their own language. Bhutia people would speak in their own language. Subba people will speak in their own Subba script, Subba language. Rai people will speak in their own language. But slowly these languages were slowly subsided, and slowly Nepali language became one of the lingua francas. So yet the irony was, all of them, all of these sub languages, peoples from these sub languages, they claimed Nepali as the lingua franca, and allowing a universal sense of identity that traverses ethnicities and political boundaries in a strange land. Many cultures that had been uprooted and forced to settle in a new land, and to create a new syncretic culture that was centered around a particular language, that is Nepali. So this is how the Nepali language basically became one of the lingua franca. And India was ruled by Mughals, so the Nepalese people, they used to call this region as Mughlan, the land owned by the Mughal people. So how I already discussed this, of course, these points, how the Nepali speaking people emerged in this area. I have already discussed these points. Aratrika, maybe the slide is still visible. I can't see the slide, but then let me see. Yeah, Nepali language. You have crossed the maybe Aratrika. You have crossed. We are not in the slide in which I am speaking right now.
This one?
Go up. Yes, migration increased. Yeah, yeah, we are here right now. Okay,
Okay.
fine. I'd like to ask my friends, like, is there any problem till now?
No, sir.
Any issues? Please put up your issues frankly, kindly. Fine, if you face any problem. Thank you very much. So I'd like to go ahead. Shall I proceed, sir?
Yes, sir. Rajaa, sir,
Pramanik, sir,
please
shall I
proceed.
proceed? Oh, okay, thank you.
Sir is on mute. Yeah,
So
yes, please
migration,
proceed.
Yes,
fine.
yes,
So
yes.
migration, thank you,
Continue.
sir. Thank you. Okay, fine. Migration increased, basically one of the issues that is there in Nepali speaking community, the problem of this identity, this emerged due to migration also, and of course this is there with almost every community in the entire world. Like আমি তো বলতেই থাকি যে কোনো মানুষ কিন্তু কোথাও কোথাও মানে वो कहीं का नहीं है, like you belong to nowhere else and you belong to everywhere else, and peoples have migrated since the inception of the human society, although, and lots of the wars occurred due to this migration issues only, and Nepali speaking community was not an exception. I would like to refer to one famous Nepali poet whose name is Lakshmi Prasad Devkota, who took a folk tale from Newari folk tale, and he came up with a masterpiece work. Once Devkota was asked before his death, like he was in the deathbed, he was asked like, what is your last wish? So he told that you can burn all of my works except Munamadan. Please preserve that book. So in Munamadan, there is a story of Muna and Madan. Madan, he travels to Tibet, and in that particular book it is referred as Lhasa, and he goes to Lhasa and to earn money, and this is a tragic story wherein Muna keeps on waiting for Madan. So therein, like in that particular masterpiece work, Muna Madan, he refers to this migration itself. Like the entire story is based on the issue of migration, where Madan goes to vote for, yeah, it was referred as vote. The Tibet was referred as vote, wherein he goes to earn gold in the vote. So migration, still Munamadan is, it's relevant for the Gorkha society because of this particular region. And again, one shifting is there, that lots of lots of shifting in the social fabric, and as well as social psychological fabric is there in the Gorkha community, wherein like lots of Gorkha people are migrating to the various countries for the livelihood today. So migration increased tremendously with the introduction of tea plantation, Sincuna plantation, and Darjeeling Himalayan railways. Like these people were brought from the eastern part of Nepal mostly, and the tea garden were owned by the British planters since 1856, as I referred earlier also, and Sincuna was started in 1865. So 1866, by 1877, there is a data which mentions that there were 19,000 workers that time, tea workers, which has right now reduced to almost very less number today. Wherein like only earlier to this, during British regime, there were almost 250 tea gardens in Darjeeling. Today it's almost 80. Most of the tea gardens have been closed today. And there is a huge crisis in tea industry today. This is also one of the major issues, and which has been addressed. This issue of tea has emerged almost in 80% of the Nepali literature, because this is a major part of the Nepalese life in Darjeeling. Because almost you can say 70% of the entire population of Darjeeling, is directly or indirectly involved with tea garden, tea industry. And another reason that I referred was Gorkha soldiers, like the people's Nepali speaking community joining in the wars. 1814 Anglo-Nepalese War, which is very famous, of 1814-16. Over 4,500 Nepalis were enlisted in the army after this war was over. And as the British were not allowed to recruit inside Nepal, they encouraged Nepalis to settle outside their border. So of course a war happened, but then the British people, they could not enter Nepal. But then there was a treaty signed, and they demanded the soldiers on the regular basis. So this is how the colonialism creates a platform where Gorkha are idealized and portrayed as the martial race, as I referred earlier to this. We'll go to next slide, Aratrika. Fine, thank you. Gorkhas were consigned the role of supplicant to the white man and inheritors of that colonial knowledge in the hierarchy of human beings created by colonialism. Gorkha identity has to balance right now. So what next? What is the situation today wherein like the people from Nepali speaking community, and how they need to go ahead? The current situation is like, of course, lots of alliance share today, even from the Gorkha community. They join the Indian Army today, but then like lots of people are joining in various other fields of social activity, economic activity, and simultaneously they are demanding for their own statehood as well. So it becomes imperative that they create their own niche in the country, in the as for the identity ground. So the Gorkha identity has to be balanced between its cultural identity as well as the demands of citizenship and national culture of India. So this is the dichotomy that the Gorkha people, Gorkha community is facing. So we move on to next slide. So I'd like to very rapidly, I'd like to go to a few names which are the names of the freedom fighters, Nepali speaking freedom fighters who were involved in the Indian independence struggle. You might be knowing about Captain Ram Singh Thakuri, who used to be almost right hand of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, who was a part of Azad Hind Fauj. But then most importantly, he happens to be the music composer of current version of the Indian national anthem Jana Gana Mana. And I'd like to go to next slide, please. Dal Bahadur Giri, who was even known as Gandhi of the Hills, and he was very close to Mahatma Gandhi. Next slide, please. Helen Lepcha. Next slide, please. Yeah, Helen Lepcha. She was from Sikkim. And she was in fact named by Gandhiji as Sabitri Devi. She also, participated in Indian independence struggle very, deeply. Then we go to Krishna Bahadur Mukhia, who was also a very close aide of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. We can change the slide, Aratrika. Aratrika, we can change the slide. Yeah, Krishna Bahadur Mukhia was born in Barekborn tea estate. As you can see, like tea estate becomes one of the most of the important human activities of Darjeeling area, and he was the personal bodyguard of Netaji. In fact, we can go to next slide. Pushpa Kumar Ghising. He was, he participated in 1946 naval uprising. Yeah.
Krishna Bahadur
Okay.
Mukhia, sir, we have left the slide. I'll go on.
Krishna Bahadur Mukhia.
So Pushpa Kumar Ghising slide again.
Pushpa Kumar Ghising. Yeah, Pushpa Kumar Ghising. Yeah, he participated in 1946 naval uprising. Fine. So I'm just slightly touching these slides. We can go to next slide. Gaga Chiring Dukpa. Yeah, we can go to next slide now. Yeah. Gaga Chiring Dukpa, he was from Sukhia Pokhari, and he was locally known as Nehru Baje, and he was very close to Nehru, as he was very close to Nehru. And Gaga removed from he was even jailed, and he continued with his anti-British protests and activities, and was the leading member of Congress, Indian National Congress in Darjeeling, from Darjeeling. I'd like to go to next slide. Subedar Niranjan Chetri. Next slide is Aratrika. We can go to next slide. Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So then we go to Subedar Niranjan Chetri, who was the first ever Gorkhali freedom fighter to die for
So we
India.
are in Subedar Niranjan Chetri slide.
Yeah. Subedar Niranjan Chetri, he was the first Gorkhali freedom fighter to die for freedom struggle. Fine. And he led the contingent of native Gorkhali soldiers for revolutionary Manipuri hero Jabrez Singh. I'd like to quote his last words before he died. My birthplace is my motherland. I'm ready to die for this land, and I'm ready to kill for this land, but I'm not ready to accept surrender and subjugation of my own land. So this is how the Gorkha people slowly developed their love for the nation India, great nation India. Then we come to a very popular figure, Major Durga Malla. Major Durga Malla. His sculpture, one of the sculpture is there in right now in front of the Parliament House today. He was from Uttaranchal, he was greatly inspired by the prominent Gandhian freedom fighters of Dehradun, he even took part in Dandi March. So these are the few names which I took for a reference that how Gorkha imagination slowly developed as a purely Indian imagination. That's where I'd like to refer to. So we can go to next slide, please. So this is how I would like to highlight how the migrant Gorkhas slowly they developed the sense of belonging to the Indian soil, and slowly how this transformation of imagination occurred, and today as we the Gorkha people, the Nepali speaking community of India, we imagine as a Indian nationals, purely Indian nationals. Surya Bikram Gewali, I would like to quote Surya Bikram Gewali, one of the pioneers of Indian Nepali literature. Now slowly we'll be moving to Indian Nepali literature. So Gewali was one of the pioneers who was there during British era itself in Darjeeling, and he's considered as one of the pioneers of for promoting Nepali language among the mass, because it was very tough task that time to write in Nepali and speaking in Nepali, because most of the sub communities would speak in their own languages. So Surya Bikram Gewali, like there was a group named as Sudhapa. Surya Bikram Gewali, Su for Surya Bikram Gewali, Dha for
Sorry, your
hello.
voice is breaking. It's okay now.
Voice is breaking.
Oh, it's okay now.
Okay. So yeah, fine. So Sudhapa is a terminology developed for three pioneer literary activists: Su for Surya Bikram Gewali, Dha for Dharnitar Koirala, and Pa for Parasmani Pradhan. These three people, they left. They did not left any stone unturned to popularize Nepali language in Darjeeling that time. So he wrote somewhere, no matter whether we are Nepalis in Nepal or Nepalis in India, we call ourselves to be a free and independent jati. Indeed, we are an independent jati, but one of the main evidence of independence is one's separate language and literature. So this is how Surya Bikram Gewali explained the importance of language and literature. The language and literature, the importance of language and literature, how it is connected with the national identity. I'd like to refer to Dr. Kumar Pradhan. Dr. Kumar Pradhan, next slide, we can go to next slide. Yeah, Dr. Kumar Pradhan happens to be a very important figure in the field of history, not only for the Gurkha community, but then he's renowned throughout India. He is no more now. Dr. Kumar Pradhan's work, PhD work, has been published by Oxford by the name the Gurkha Conquests. This is referred as one of the irreplaceable works for understanding the Indo-Nepal relationships, as well as the politics of South Asian India, South Asian region. So he wrote in his book Gurkha Conquest, Nepali is a language spoken by the people who are also called Gurkhas or Gurkhas, well known for their valor. Many books have been written in English about their life, manners and customs, but almost nothing about their literature. That the history of Nepali language can be traced back at least from the early part of the 13th century AD, as evinced by a number of epigraphs. That prose writing in Nepali began earlier than in many other modern Indo-Aryan languages. That constants stunted in general the growth of Nepali literature, yet that its achievements in different genres are facts little known to many. This history is mainly for the non-Nepali readers and for their benefit. Nepali literature has been taken as a whole, as is the general custom followed by the Nepali historians. So this is where, like, he even mentions the presence of Nepali language in the 13th century AD. So I'd like to skip this slide now. We can go to next slide. I have taken an excerpt by the contemporary leading figure in Nepali literature, Mr. Manprasad Surba from Darjeeling. He writes in one of his articles, even after India became free from the British colonialization in 1947, many ethnic minority groups still remained colonized. Now, within the states governed by the larger and much powerful group, Nepali-speaking ethnic group in West Bengal and elsewhere is one such that has never been free from the feeling of being colonized. It feels to have been subjected to the colonization of various forms, political, educational, economic, cultural, etc. The constant feeling of being haunted by the specter of uncertainty and insecurity has, time and again, given rise to the need of asserting and articulating its identity in the national perspective. Although the feeling related to the identity crisis has played a significant role in our poetry, a larger chunk of our modern and contemporary poetry is the images of life lived by man in pre and post-Cold War. So this is one of the excerpts which again makes us clear about the identity, prejudice and identity, paradox. We can go to right now next slide. I've taken Indra Bahadur Rai, one of the legends of Nepali literature. He wrote in Indian Nepali nationalism and Nepali poetry in this article in 1990, which was published in 1994. While in Nepali literary writings was begun by elite Brahmins or Aryans who wrote in praise of their king in India, the beginning of Indian Nepali literature was made by common soldiers and laborers who were mostly from Mongoloid ethnic groups and who wrote of their actual experiences of battles fought and lives lived in India. Indian Nepali literature can justly be proud of its popular and proletariat beginning. So this is where I.B. Rai highlights how the elitist writing was differentiated with the common man's writing. So as it is very clear, even I mentioned earlier also, the soldiers, how the biggest chunk of the Nepali community, the soldiers, they play a significant role even in shaping the culture and art and literature. As we can, in one of the upcoming slides, we will see that Nepali literature began with the soldiers itself, like in the massive level. So one more thing is, I'd like to refer to this particular excerpt is, Subhas Gising, as you people might be knowing about this particular man, who was regarded as one of the political pioneers in Darjeeling, who started his party Gurkha National Liberation Front in 1980s, 84. It was formed, and a huge uprising was there in the land of Darjeeling for the demand of Gorkha land. Subhas Gising, prior to becoming a politician, was an artist, was a writer. And basically, he was the novelist, and he was the man, along with Prakash Kovid, who popularized the Nepali novel. When the India was having the populist writings in novel, that time Nepali literature got Subhas Gising. And he even came up with the writings basically on the war, because he was from army background. His Lumkhum camp is very, very significant in Nepali literature, where he portrays the violence, the aftermath, the violence of the war. Lumpur camp. I'd like to refer to this, and one more book I'd like to refer is Yuddha Re Yuddha, which was published in Darjeeling by and which was penned by the legendary poet Agam Singh Giri. It portrays about the again about the war. So I'd like to slowly highlight, rapidly highlight the Nepali organizations in India. 1918, Gorkha Library was opened. 1919, Hillmen's Association was started. And 1919, Hillmen's Association is regarded as one of the pioneering, organizations which put up for the first time for the separate identity agenda in front of British regime in the. In front of British regime, they proposed that there should be some separate administrative setup for Gorkha speaking, Nepali speaking people in India. And All India Gorkha League, although it was initially started as a social organization, later on it was converted into political party. All India Gorkha League was founded in Dehradun by Chandan Singh in 1921. Nepali Sahitya Sammelan was formed in 1924. So these way lots of organizations were formed slowly, which carved out a space within a multiple community as a special space for Gorkha identity and Gorkha imagination. I'd like to go to next slide. We are in short of time, maybe. I do have lots of slides. I'd like to simply go to, I'd like to right now scheme the slides, as because we are short of time, maybe. Yeah. So quest of Nepali identity, like 1907, Hillmen's Association of India, they put up for the first time the proposal to government of British regime for the separate administrative setup. 1940s ABGL, they raised the demand of separate administrative setup. 1970s Pranta Parishad and Nilo Janda was an organization of Subhas Gising again. These two parties, they demanded for a separate administrative setup. 1980s GNLF emerged, and 1990s Gorkha Janamukti Morcha, they emerged as the parties for demanding a separate administrative setup. I'd like to skip the slides right now. Oratrika, we can skip the slides. You can just keep on skipping. You can keep on skipping. I'd like to go to literary part right now. Yeah, birth of Indian Nepali writing. Fine, here. So Indian, so right now we come to Indian Nepali writing. Indian Nepali literary writing, I'd like to quote I.B. Rai again, Indra Bahadur Rai. He wrote somewhere, Indian Nepali literary writing had its beginnings in the sawais penned mainly by Gurkha soldiers stationed in Assam, and in laharis composed by Gurkha or Nepali laborers working in the tea gardens of Darjeeling. We'll go to next slide. Skip this slide. Skip this slide. Yeah, we got the first ever Nepali magazine, which is Gorkhe Khabar Kagat, which was produced, which was published in the year 1901. You can see the picture of Padri Ganga Prasad Pradhan, who was the editor of this Khabar Kagat. This was the first ever documented printed document. And we go to next slide.
Sir, we have time till 4:30 also.
Okay, yeah. Fine. Anyways, but then we do have question answer session also maybe.
Yeah,
at
yeah,
last.
including the Q&A session.
Yeah, fine. But then I'd like to wrap up early because I do have lots of slides. Anyways, so we start with the Sawai. The Nepali literature started with Sawai and Lahiri, Lahari, not Lahiri. Sawai, it's a form of poetry which initially was written for praising God and praising kings. Later on, it became the part of people, part of public, uh, and Gorkha soldiers, they started penning down the Sawai and Lahari, expressing their feelings of war. So this is how the Nepali literature began. Next, we can go to next slide. We get the first documented, Sawais. Tulachan Ale from 44th Gorkha Regiment and Dhanabir Bhandari from 44th Gorkha Regiment in 1893 and 1894. They wrote about the Battle of Manipur and Battle of Abhor Hills, respectively, in the forms of Sawai. So these were the first ever documented, poems. Then we go to next slide. We get first Nepali grammar, which was published in 1820 in Calcutta, and 1840s scriptural scripts were published from Darjeeling by Moravian missionaries. Like basically they were the missionaries, but then they published Nepali grammar. British administration recognized importance of language and encouraged study, and they also produced lots of Nepali books. Then we go to next slide. Sudhapa, as I already referred to you, Surya Bikram Gewali, Dharnidhar Koirala, and Parasmani Pradhan. These three people, they even were, as Rabindranath Tagore in Bengali, he came up with the Sohajpat textbooks. Like these were the people who came up with the Nepali textbooks, and they wrote lots of literature for the common people. And even Balkrishna Sambh, who is like a veteran dramatist from Nepal, he told Darjeeling became a literary hub for Nepali literature. He once told that whatever Darjeeling thinks today, Nepal will be thinking tomorrow. As a Darjeeling le je socha, boli Nepal le tyo socha. So this is how Darjeeling became a literary hub. We can go to next slide. Naivedya in 1920, it's a collection of poems by Pandit Dhanidhar Sharma. It is taken as a National Gita or like Bible, whatever it is. And Pandit Dhanidhar Koirala, along with Surya Bikram Gewali and Parasmani Pradhan, they were even socially active. They even started GDNS, Gurkha Dukha Nivarak Sammelan, the oldest organization in Darjeeling. We can go to next slide. Now I would like to come to Agam Singh Giri, who is a very, very prominent figure in the Nepali literature. In 1970s, he was active in the decades of 1970s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and he came up with lots of poetries. One of the poetry I'd like to recite to you in front of you by Agam Singh Giri, which addresses whatever topic that we are discussing right now, the topic of identity, the theme of identity, the agenda of identity. In the entire history of Nepali literature, Agam Singh Giri highlights the quest of identity with the loudest voice. Agam Singh Giri, the poetry, one of the poetry, Nachini Ne Bhayecho, is regarded as one of the important poetry in Nepali literature for its deep-rooted voice for identity quest. तिमी त यहाँ नचिनिने भएछौ, तिमी त यहाँ नचिनिने भएछौ, आँखाका ज्योति सब हराइसकेछन्, गालाका रगतहरू सुकिसकेछन्, तिमी त यहाँ नचिनिने भएछौ, तिमी त यहाँ रुदा रुदै निदाएको बालक जस्तो, कठोर कारागारको यातना भोगी विरक्त बन्दी जस्तो, घाँस खोसिएको बास लुटिएको विफल हतभागी जस्तो, तिमी त यहाँ अर्कै भएछौ, तिमी त यहाँ नचिनिने भएछौ, तिमी को हौ चिनाउन आएको होइन म, तिमी को हौ चिनाउन आएको होइन म, बितेका गौरव गाथा कहन आएको होइन म, केवल तिमी तिमी नै हौ कि चिन्न आएको म, तर तिमी त यहाँ नचिनिने भएछौ. So this is very famous poetry by Agam Singh Giri. This poetry is Nachinine Bhajo. And then he writes a long poetry, Yuddha Ra Yuddha, War and the Warrior in 1970, in which like the preface is written by the legendary Indra Bahadur Rai. So this Yuddha Ra Yuddha, this talks about the saga of warfare and the involvement of the Gurkha people in the warfares, and he criticizes the dark aspect of the war, and he tries to enlighten the Gurkha people that please evolve intellectually, please evolve, please keep yourself away from the violence. So this masterpiece write up is very, very significant in the history of Nepali literature. We go to the next slide. One of the poetry, one of the excerpts of the book War and the Warrior, I have taken one of the excerpts. I'd like to read it out for you. Agam Singh Giri's War and the Warrior. O warrior, your son is yet to be born. He shall be then a part of your life. Allow him not to be wounded, spilling blood for others. Forbid him to sharpen his kukuri, to fight other men's battles, to add shine to others' existence. History will only brand him as a murderer. Let him not be accused by all, accursed by all, or consigned to insults and injuries. We are in the midst of war. We have fought and have somehow survived. There is a cry of fear in our heart. War, not understood, is starkly visible in our eyes. So this is how Agam Singh Giri would like to highlight the difference between the war that is fought for the others and the war that is fought for the self. So he enlightens even the people to fight the war for own cause. I'd like to go to the next point. Next slide. We can skip this slide, Ritrika. Now we go to very rapidly. We'll see how the printing activity, the literature in print happened. 1901, Gorkhe Khabar Kagat came out. 1902, Upanyas Tarangini came out. Sundari, this magazine came out in 1906. Madhavi, this came up in 1908. Chandra, this magazine came out in 1914. Gorkhali, this magazine came out in 1915. Sharada, I do not get the proper year, but then it was very oldest magazine in which even the Devkota, Lakshmi Prasad Devkota also used to write. Dialo, it is one of the oldest magazines of Darjeeling. Chandrika, one of the oldest magazines of Karshiong. This is how these magazines came and these carried the writings of the Nepali literature, Nepali writers. So we go to next slide. So what are the major literary voices that are there in Nepali literature? So what we see is it started up with the Bhakti Dhara and all. Of course, I have not taken those out here. Very prominently, very significantly, Identity Quest and Identity Crisis were the agenda taken out in the Nepali literature in the very beginning, in the most prominent way. Then Aftermath of War, Criticism of War, Ethnic Suffering, Feminism, and slowly after 1980s, these agenda also came. These issues also came in Nepali literature. One of them is feminism, marginalization, resistance, and migration. These are the chief voices, literary voices in Nepali literature. We can move on to right now. Next slide. Waves. If we talk about the waves, classical wave was there, which is of course found in almost every literature. Bhakti Dhara. Then comes romantic wave, even in Nepali literature. Dan Khaling, Narbahadur Dahal, Birendra Subba, these other writers who were the pioneers in bringing about the romantic wave. Of course, they were also at par with the Chayawad of Hindi Sahitya and writings of Rabindranath Tagore, like mysticism, the mystic writing of Rabindranath Tagore. All these came up at par with all these literature in Nepali literature with the writings of Dan Khaling, Birendra Subba and all in the name of romantic wave. Then comes post-colonial wave, wherein like slowly the Indian imagination, Indian identity, imagination of Indian identity was reflected slowly in the post-colonial wave. and then came the modernist wave. I have divided the evolution of Nepali literature as per my own choice. Statutory warning: don't take this as the final. I have segregated myself for my own easiness. So we can come down to modernist wave then. After that, nationalist wave with the advent of Agam Singh Giri, Subhash Gising, Northern Rumba and all. And then contemporary wave, which was started by the veterans Manprasad Subba, Rajendra Bhandari, Norjang Shangden, Vindhya Subba, etc. So these are the segregation of the. Now we can go to the movements. Fine. One of the movements is Jharrowat, which was started, of course, in Nepal, but then it also was there in it's present in Darjeeling. Then came Tesro Ayam, one of the very important, very significant movement that we get in Nepali literature, which is started by the trio, legendary Indra Bahadur Rai, Ishwar Ballav, and Bairagi Kaila. Ishwar Ballabh and Bairagi Kaila, they worked in the poetry script, and Indra Bahadur Rai, he worked in the prose. Their dogma in literature in the name of Tesro Ayam, that is, this Tesro Ayam means third dimension. They were highly influenced by Cubist movement of Pablo Picasso. Arutrika, you can come back. Don't go there. Yeah, let's be here for the timing. So Tesro Ayam, it highlights the urgency to address the third dimension, that is the depth. Like they claimed that the literature that was being written till their time highlighted only about the length and breadth, that is the flat literature. They defined the earlier literature as a flat literature. So they claimed that their literature is a solid literature, concrete literature, which even addresses the depth of the life and the world. So this is what was the crux of the Tesro Ayam. And it had a huge impact in the literature and in the society. But then it was also alleged that Tesro Ayam writing is very tough for understanding. The very famous write-up in Tesro Ayam is Mateko Mancheko Bhashan by Bairagi Kaila. And then comes Leela Lekhan. Indra Bahadur Rai right now jumped alone right now. Bairagi Kaila and Ishwar Ballabh, they moved to Nepal. Indra Bahadur Rai was in Darjeeling only, and he started one writing, that is Leela Lekhan. He came up with Katputli Ko Man, this book, in the year 1987, when the Gorkhaland movement was going on. Gorkhaland movement started in 1986 and culminated in 1988. This book came in 1987 as a representative book for this Leela Lekhan Andolan. Writing, although he did not mention this as an Andolan, but then this was a literary movement itself, in the sense that it created the waves, ripples later on. Leela Lekhan highlighted about the right now, spiritual, not as the religious, but the spiritual aspect of the writing, wherein like he brought about mostly the metaphysical, philosophical ground in writing, including the, it was also a, gamut of, a conglomeration of so many dogmas and so many ideologies and so many literary theories, including even some of the scientific theories like quantum mechanics even. So Leela Lekhan, again, it was alleged that Leela Lekhan is not that comprehensible, and this literature was alleged that this is too tough to understand. Then came Sankraman. So Sankraman was started by Sanjay Bishta, Sanjay Bantawa, Keval Chandra Lama, Remika Thapa, and others. The magazine was started from Varanasi, and it was even centered in North Bengal. Sankraman now approached the readers with a very humble and very polite and very simple writing, which was in fact maybe in a sense, which was even an option for the readers who would not like to read the tough literatures written on the ground of Leela Lekhan. And Sankraman had a huge impact on the youth writers, young writers, and slowly the literature became sublime. And of course, before that, the writers without any claim of literary movement as such, writers like Manprasad Subba, Mohan Thakuri, Gyanendra Khatiwada, Norjang Shangden, Bindya Subba, Northern Rumba, Sarad Chetri. These writers, they came with very, transparent, very lucid language, and they approached the readers in this manner. And they are also regarded as the, writers who, gave a sigh of relief to the readers who were, overburdened by the, so-called tough Lila Lekhan. And then came Vichalan. Vichalan was started by Sudhir Chetri and his team. And regarding Vichalan, like lots of controversies are there, like why it is Vichalit and why this writing is Vichalit. They were not able to clear it out. But then they might be, focusing on like the basic character of literature. Like Kuntak, the very Adi Guru of literature, he showed that the Bakrokti should be the basic character of writing. So Bichalan emphasized on the Bakrokti, the deviation from the normal route of expression. Then comes very prominently, very importantly, the Kinari Karan Andolan, Kinari Karan Lekhan, which was started by Manprasad Subba and Remika Thapa. Both are very, very renowned poets, very, very popular poets. And Kinari Karan had a huge ripples, like it created huge ripples. Even today it is felt in the young writers. Kinari Karan basically talks about dichotomy between the center and the periphery. It takes the maybe the root from the postmodernist dogmas as well. And it talks about the, most importantly about the marginalization of the marginalized people. And of course, because this is being written in Gorkhali script, Nepali script, so this tries to highlight about the marginalized section, marginalized Gorkha section, marginalized Nepali speaking people. But then of course later on, like this Kinari Karan movement was extended by Manprasad Subba and Remika Thapa to the, even to the causes of nature and ecology. Then comes Hastakshep. It was started by Rajaa Puniani, Manoj Bugatti, Nima Sherpa, Bhupendra Subba, Leknath Chetri and all. And Hastakshep was announced in the year 1995 in Kalimpong, in one of the events of Kalimpong, with their magazine Hastakshep. Hastakshep is all about like, it's an introduction of resistance writing in Nepali literature. There was no any as such declared resistance writing. It resists the, imposed ideology, the ideology that is imposed by the power in the common man, and it tries to motivate people to fight against the imposed ideology and to come out with their own ideologies, with their own eyes to see the world. So this is what is all about Hastakshep. Then comes Samaveshi, which was started by Basudev Pulami, Gyanendra Yakso, Neeraj Thapa and all. This talks about the inclusive literature. And then comes right now currently one writing has come. This is Uttar Lila Lekhan, which is started by Nima Sherpa from Darjeeling. So these are the main literary movements that we get in Darjeeling. We can go to next slide now. Yeah, Tesro, I've already talked about this. We can skip this slide. Lila Lekhan also, I talked about this writing also. Maya physics is there, quantum mechanics is there, nihilism is there, dialectical materialism is inside this. Yeah, we can skip this slide, Lila Lekhan. Now we can go to Nepali theatre. Like I'd like to highlight a prominent Nepali theatres. Ani Devrali Runcha was there in 1972, which talks about, and these theatres mostly talked about in the line of Muna Madan. Muna Madan was also staged several times. Ani Devrali Runcha happens to be one of the smash hits in Darjeeling. It was staged several times, and it was directed by Man Bahadur Mukhia. It talks about the migration of Nepali people. Agoko Jhilkaharu, it was staged in 1976. Ani Bhalemuro Runcha, it was in fact a remake of Ani Devrali Runcha, remix of Ani Devrali Runcha. It was staged in 1980, and it was directed and written by C.K. Shrestha, one of the legendary theatre artists and theatre activist of Darjeeling. Durga Malla, this was the drama written and directed by Kiran Thakur in 1980s. Salam Really Mai, Ainama Herda Ramsaili. These are the very popular dramas by C.K. Shrestha. These Salam Really Mai and Ainama Herda Ramsaili were staged for more than 100 times throughout India. Bhanura Pala, it is also a smash hit. Like it came in various versions. Right now, we have got Bhanura Pala edition 1, edition 2, and edition 3. Right now, they are coming up with one film, Bhanura Pala Revisited. It was directed by Lalit Gole in 1990. Now we can go to next slide. As we are maybe like it is 4:13 in my mobile. I'd like to go to a few glimpses of Nepali Indian writing. Then I'll wrap up my session. Firstly, I'd like to go to Agam Singh Giri again. The excerpt is narrated by MP Subba, that is Manprasad Subba. What's the meaning of life if lived oblivious of love of soil? I have endless love for my Darjeeling, the queen of Phil. We can go to next slide. Khadag Singh Rai Kada. This is also translated by Manprasad Subba. He talks about the patriotism in me as a poet. My Indianness struggling in the midst of injustice and ignorance. I wish my speech could reach you of the right that enables me to be agile in sovereign India. Oh, my country, the right to love you. We can go to next slide. Northern Rumba, he died at an early age. He was a very bright poet. He wrote, if you remain the ruler, we shall not accept. If you remain the ruler, we shall not accept. Yet we will not fall apart. One voice, one demand, our land. We are not demanding the sky. This is by Northern Rumba. He happens to be very, very famous, even lyricist. We can go to next slide. We can go to next slide. I'd like to take a prose from one of the very prominent novel, very significant novel in Indian Nepali literature, which has been translated into English by Manjushri Thapa and which has been published by Speaking Tiger. There is a carnival today, Aja Ramita Cha. One of the protagonists, Janak, speaks in this novel. We, the Nepalis of Darjeeling, inseparable from the land of Darjeeling, just like its trees and streams being in the waves of history, have arrived from one point of geography to the other, belonging now to one and now to the other. Today, if anyone asks this Uttis is one of the kinds of trees, and pine trees, this Rungdung Khola and this frail stream, where do you belong to? The answer will be, I belong to where now I stand. We can go to next slide. This slide is by this poetry is by Gopal Bhandari. He talks to God, an ode to God. You plod a lot, the human brain. The crop of superstition grew in plenty. Reality was chased out. Technology was chased out. The earth was thankful to you. Human race was grateful to you. You are great. You are superb. Oh God. This is by Gopal Bhandari. I just wanted to give you, snapshots like how the Indian Nepali literature is being writing today. We can go to next slide. So this is by Mohan Thakuri, Sahitya Academy Award winner, writer. Darjeeling again. Even the colored tiny dreams don't belong to me. I think so. I'm frightened. I'm skeptic to listen to these stranger thudding footsteps somewhere inside me. We can go to next slide. In the barn, Gyanendra Khatiwada. Separating the paddy from the straw, two oxen walk around an axis. In the barn, I wrote it, walking behind them, holding a stick in my hand. Separating the paddy from the straw, two oxen walk around an axis. In the barn, I wrote it, walking behind them, holding a stick in my hand. No, no, no. Actually, three oxen are walking around this axis. This is by Gyanendra Khatiwada. I can come to Home, Keval Chandra Lama. He is a very eminent artist as well as poet. Home has chased me out of the home. Home had chased me out of the home. Outside the home, in the chilled weather, I feel tempted of the hot breasts of my bed. I have with me the carnivals, which open the menopause doors of home. So this is how, the various typical subjects are being taken, apart from the identity issue. We can go to next point, next slide. America, the Coward by Monas Bogati. America panics. She gets frightened of the fire that breaks out into bamboo jungle. She gets scared of festive fireworks that tears apart the sky. America panics of a bowl full of darkness. America breathes her last when the lunchbox of a lever is opened and what comes out is a burnt loaf. We can go to next slide. This is Village Sketch by Saran Gurung Muskan. Like a half-burnt cigarette on ashtray, my village, hugged by Chanakya's shrewd fingers, burns futilely. They only know how to be pregnant and give heat to their belly by dog-eared stove of history. They abort every time. They dream of having a healthy son. We can go to next slide. So this will be my last presentation. We have 2 more slides. Remika Thapa, who is in fact one of the propagandists of Kirani Karan movement with Manprasad Subba. This piece has been translated by Manprasad Subba himself. In history, orphans were called illicit embryos. In history, orphans were called illicit embryos left by some bastards. Now, last slide I would like to come down to is a piece by Pabitra Lama, one of the prominent figures in poetry presentation. This piece has been translated by Ishani Datta. The poetry goes like this: no matter how silenced the future you gave us, we will serve you pristine tea. No matter how silenced the future you give us, we will serve you pristine tea. Even after 2 centuries, how colonized can our ears be? We believed siren and life are the same. So with this, I'd like to conclude my session. I think we are left with 10 minutes. I'd like to again thank you to all who patiently listened to me. I'm very grateful to, again, all the facilitators who facilitated this session. I'm obliged to be here with you people. I'd like to, Pramanik sir, if like he comes down to the dais.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. I would like to request our colleagues that if you have any question, please unmute your mic and directly ask the question.
আমি সুতবা বলছি।
হ্যাঁ, তার আগে একটা প্রশ্ন এসেছে চ্যাট বক্সে, ওটা নিয়ে নি।
ওকে।
Okay, Rajaa sir, there is a question.
Yes,
any similarities between the sawais penned by Gorkha soldiers and English war poetry?
So can you repeat?
Any similarities between the sawai penned by Gorkha soldiers and English war poetry?
There is only the similarity of the content. As far as the content of warfare is there, warfare is never good for the human society. It has got the dark aspect. So that similarity is there, of course, but then, you know, format wise, these are different. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, please. Shutapa ma'am.
হ্যাঁ, ওকে।
বলুন না।
হ্যাঁ স্যার, বলছি যে লিটারারি মুভমেন্টস গুলো নিয়ে যখন আলোচনা হচ্ছিল, আমি বাংলাতেই বলছি কারণ উনি বাংলা বলেছেন, আমি বুঝেছি যে উনি বাংলাটা বোঝেন।
কোনো অসুবিধা নেই, ওনার অসুবিধা হলে আমরা ট্রান্সলেটও করে দেব, অসুবিধা নেই, আপনি বলুন।
আপনি এগিয়ে যান।
হ্যাঁ, লীলা লেখন এবং লিটারারি মুভমেন্ট সম্পর্কে বলতে গিয়ে ওই লীলা লেখন, উত্তর লীলা লেখন, মানে লীলা লেখনে দেখা গেল যে স্পিরিচুয়াল বিষয়গুলোকে গুরুত্ব দেওয়া হচ্ছে। তো সেটি যখন উত্তর লীলা লিখনে এলো, তখন কি সেই স্পিরিচুয়াল যে রাইটিং গুলোর মধ্যে কোন মানে বিষয়টা কিভাবে এলো, মানে তখন কি জাস্টিফাই করা হচ্ছে কিভাবে?
ওকে, ফাইন। আচ্ছা, হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, আপনার শেষ ম্যাম না আরো বলবেন?
হ্যাঁ
হ্যাঁ, আরো বলবেন না শেষ?
হ্যাঁ, আপনার প্রশ্ন শেষ হয়েছে ম্যাম?
না, আরেকটি দ্বিতীয় যেটি বিষয় সেটি হচ্ছে গিয়ে আমরা মানে নেপালি অনুষ্ঠান হিসেবে দূরদর্শন ডিডি বাংলাতে একটি ভালো প্রোগ্রাম হতো, ছোটবেলা থেকে দেখে দেখে বড় হয়েছি। সেখানটাতে ওই বিভিন্ন ফোক ডান্স এবং তার সঙ্গে বিভিন্ন ফোক কালচারের কথাও ধরা দিত এবং প্রকৃতি নেচার সেখানে যেন একাকার হয়ে যেত, ওই লোভেই দেখতাম তখন। তো সেই দিক থেকে মানে ফোক লিটারেচার এবং ফোক সং সম্পর্কে জানার আগ্রহ রইল, ভবিষ্যতে যদি কখনো পাই। ঠিক আছে স্যার,
হ্যাঁ
বলুন
ম্যাম,
এই
থ্যাংক ইউ।
লীলা লেখন আর উত্তর লীলা
হ্যাঁ
লেখন যদি
থ্যাংক
একটু
ইউ
বলেন।
সুতপা ম্যাম, ধন্যবাদ সুতপা ম্যাম। আমি চেষ্টা করব আপনার প্রশ্নের উত্তর দেওয়ার। লীলা লেখন খুবই ইন্দ্রবাহাদুর রায় যখন লীলা লেখন নিয়ে আগালেন, ওনার রিপ্রেজেন্টেটিভ বই, প্রতিনিধি বইই হলো কাঠপুতলি কো মন, ফাইন, অ্যান্ড লেটার অন পহেলো ঝালও আসলো খুব পরের দিকে। তো কাঠপুতলি কো মন আসলে এটা গল্পের সংগ্রহ, ফাইন। তো যেখানে উনি থিওরাইজ করেন লীলা লেখন ব্যাপারটাকে, স্পিরিচুয়ালিজম বলতে গেলে আমি যেটা বললাম পরে যে মেটাফিজিক্যাল, ইনফ্যাক্ট ইট ওয়াজ মোর মেটাফিজিক্যাল অ্যান্ড ম্যাটেরিয়ালিজম থেকে দূরে গেলেন, দূরের স্ট্যান্ড ওখানে, কিন্তু অবশ্যই আবার ডাইলেকটিক্যাল ম্যাটেরিয়ালিজমটাকে নিয়ে নিচ্ছেন আমি। তো একটা এটা এই অ্যালিগেশনটাও আসলো যে এটা জগা খিচড়ির মতন, আর রিডার্স আর গেটিং কনফিউজড। সো এই ব্যাপারটা ছিল, কিন্তু খুবই ডিপ রুটেড রাইটিং এটা। এটাকে অবশ্যই এরকম জেনারেলাইজ করা উচিত না। তো অবশ্যই এটা স্টিল কন্ট্রোভার্সির মধ্যে আছে। তো তারপরে রিসেন্টলি কয়েকটি এই লকডাউনের টাইমে দার্জিলিং এর দু একজন বন্ধুরা ওনারা একটা পত্রিকা বাইর করেন, নামটা হচ্ছে উত্তর লীলা লেখন। তো ওনারা ক্লেম করলেন যে এটা আমরা নতুন একটা আন্দোলনে যাচ্ছি, কিন্তু ওই একটাই ম্যাগাজিন দিয়ে আমরা মানে ক্লিয়ার এখনো হয়ে ওঠেনি ওনারা এক্স্যাক্টলি কি বলতে চেয়েছেন। ওনারা দু একটা পয়েন্ট এনেছেন যে রাইটিং এ একটু সরলতার আগ্রহ, এরকম দু একটা পয়েন্ট আছে, কিন্তু এখনই উত্তর লীলা লেখন নিয়ে কিছু বলাটা ইনজাস্টিস হবে ম্যাম। তো ওনাদের আরো লেখাগুলো দেখতে হবে, তখনই কিছু বলা যাবে, সেই তফাৎটা আর কি। আর এনারা এটাও ক্লেম করেননি যে ইন্দ্র বাহাদুর রায়ের যে লীলা লেখন ওটারই ওনারা উত্তরাধিকারী বা ওখান থেকে বেরিয়ে যাচ্ছেন, এই প্রসঙ্গে ওখানে কিছু উল্লেখ নেই আর কি ওনাদের ম্যাগাজিনে। তো মেবি
Okay. Sir, could you please suggest some references for Treaty of Sugauli?
বুক স্যার,
A book or any article?
whichever I refer to you,
writer?
the book by Dr. Kumar Pradhan, The Gurkha Conquest, would be the most authentic book. And then Pahilo Pahar is a book again by Kumar Pradhan. Pahilo Pahar.
Okay.
Fine. Fine, thank you. Any other questions, sir?
Is there any other question?
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm Ishani.
Yes, Ishani, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
nice surprise, you're here, Ishani. Okay, fine. Thank you
yes,
for
I
that.
just needed to ask you something. When you were talking about the migration in the beginning of how an Indian Nepali community was formed in and around the Darjeeling Hills, and you just mentioned that they were recruited as soldiers in the army and taken as tea garden workers. But then there is this other side of history which I believe should also be pointed to. The
Fine.
fact that after Prithvinarayan Shah's conquest and and his imposing a common Nepali language for the various communities that were there in Nepal at that point, which includes all these sub communities that you are talking about. But after the imposition of the Nepali language, I believe what happened was, since the Nepali that was imposed by Prithvinarayan Shah had Indo-Aryan roots, it is an Indo-Aryan language, so it took its influence from Sanskrit and all the other language from this side of from India, like Western India, because Prithvinarayan Shah was a Rajput ruler. So but then what happened was, all these communities that were there and which had their own indigenous languages, these indigenous communities, they were of course to an extent left out, and there was this sense of the need to forcefully migrate as well, like to cross the borders and come to this side of come to India, which is Indian subcontinent at that point in time, and establish a kind of language that you said, that the lingua franca, that this common tongue that they established in India, was because there was the need for a common language such that the British could also communicate and then they could also be a part of the country. But that there was this need as well, to come out of the Sanskrit roots and to free themselves from that particular influence to an extent, which is why the Indian Nepali, like the Nepali we speak in India, or the what the community speaks in the Darjeeling Hills today is quite far removed from the way Nepali is spoken, or literature is produced in Nepal, even till almost like 10-15 years ago. Right now we are all in this contemporary phase. We are more or less writing in the same kind of language. But
So
no,
what's your question?
I just wanted to ask, like, can you just tell me tell us maybe something more about this kind of forced migration, not
Yeah.
just the
Yeah, you can continue. Yeah.
no, this is only my question.
Okay, fine. So thank you, Isani. It was really nice to hear you. In fact, actually, I already had discussed this, in other sense, like I had already referred to Prithvinarayan Shah as well as whatever points you referred to. Although, like you came out with something, a bit of a different aspect. Of course, you are true. I do agree with you. And we have to keep in mind that, like, in the entire world, like, the peoples have been divided because of the political boundaries, political backgrounds, because of the wars, because of the industrial movements. There are too many factors which divide the people. Like if you talk about my own, like as I talked about my own ancestors, like my ancestors came from Pakistan, and I was divided because of Indo-Pakistan division. I would have been in Pakistan right now. So I came to Darjeeling. So you see, this is there, and Bangladeshi people and peoples from West Bengal, like they still love each other, but then like there is a political boundary, uh, almost like at par with these factualities. The Nepali speaking people in Nepal and Nepali speaking people in India, they are also bonded in some way because lingua franca is same, cultures are same almost, but then like the political difference is something socio-political as well as political, purely political difference, as well as and hugely the economic difference that is there. uh, this demarcation, of course, has the background whatever you told. Starting from the Prithvinarayan Shah regime to the British colonialization, and basically whatever I refer to, I repeat again, because of the establishment of the biggest industries in the world, that is tea industry and Syncona industry and railways industry, which is toy train out here, the THR. Because of these economic backgrounds, the Nepali speaking people out here, of course, whatever Nepali is spoken out here and written out here, you also refer to it. This is different than the Nepali there in that is there in Nepal. Of course, the grammar is same, but then so and mostly in Nepal, it was the power game by Prithvinarayan Shah, and it was the power necessity that Nepali should come as in lingua franca. Whereas there is something different. Like the reason was quite different in India. In the case of India, when British people they started establishing these factories, they saw very close to them eastern Nepal, and the peoples already residing out there in some of the places out here in India itself during the British era. These people were taken, and these people were very cool and calm, and they could be working for working just like machines. So they were involved, and still when the Hillcart Road was being constructed, this was the very first construction, people used to speak in their own languages. They used to use only sign language. The laborers, while they interacted, it is told that they spoke in sign language, because Subba man will be speaking in Subba, Rai will be speaking in Rai. So slowly, with the advent of Sudhapa movement, like as I referred to you, and with the advent of the the spread of Christianity, Christianity is also something to do with the Darjeeling's literature and language, wherein like the first ever scripts came from the Christian scripts, like Bibles and mini Bibles and all. So and this Gorkhe Khabar Kagat, whatever I mentioned, which was published in 1991, this was also the one of the activities for spreading Christianity in Darjeeling in Nepali language. So this is how these are the whatever I meant to tell to you is, in Nepal it was the unification power necessity, and in India it was the industrial necessity, wherein Indra Bahadur rightly point out that our evolution of the Nepali literature in Darjeeling is the proletariat literature. Thank you, Ishani.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, actually, we have to conclude this session.
Yeah.
We're already running out of
sort
time.
of time. Yeah.
Many thanks to you, Rajaa sir. And especially, I would like to thank on behalf of the Department of Comparative Indian Language and Literature, Calcutta University, and the UGC-HRDC University of Calcutta for giving us the time and to discuss such an insightful lecture.
Thank you. I don't know whether I was able to justify the topic, but then I tried my best, and thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you
to all.